For this EP, we started out, obviously wrote the songs as a band in practice. We kind of had different approaches to that, with some of it starting from Gabe's synth part, and then we kind of built Dance With Me out of that synth part. Kind of added some drums, added some guitar, and then came in and added the vocals over the top of that. Seasickness, Nick brought to us as kind of a here's a set of lyrics and the chords that I want to use, and then we kind of built the song out of that. Laura came really organically of just we were jamming and came up with this riff that Nick had on guitar, and then I added some drums, added some bass, and then did vocals over the top of that. So we've kind of had different approaches to all of that. But as far as the recording process, we started out at the beginning of winter break. Gabe and I got together and did all the drum and bass tracks for the 6 songs. So we would go through, find a tempo, get a click track, and then we would go through and record drums and bass in the home setup. And then we were able to have all of that to send to Nick and Kevin that they could record guitar and vocals, then overdubbed over the recorded drums and bass.
I recorded a bunch of stuff, scratch tracks for the 3 songs we're doing today before we came here. I'm recording doubles of the guitar, the rhythm, lead, and whatever other parts I needed to record through both mics from my amp and also DI, so I ended up with like a bunch of guitar tracks. We're using those today in the studio for Gabe and Alan, drum and bass to track to, just to kind of like listen to kind of how the song goes as they play, as they lay down tracks. And so what I'm going to do today after they're done tracking is I'm going to set up all my stuff and then go back and do all of the stuff that I did before recording all my tracks, but in the studio this time with really nice gear.
Nick put in all the rhythm guitar parts to every song, and before he did his solos for all 3 songs, he actually sent it over to me so I could lay down my vocal tracks and harmonies, and he went off of those cues a lot of the time in our songs. And so I went in and recorded all the melodies, and we actually ended up making some changes to the melody as we went, specifically to Dance With Me. There are parts of the song that are difficult for me to hit, but with a little bit of help and a little bit of studio magic where we had everybody else on the other side of the mic, and so they were able to give me feedback immediately after a take on whether I'm sharp, flat, just off pitch in general, or if the take was good or not. And that was a huge help in fixing any minute details that were out of place. From that, we were able to get all the melodies, all the harmonies, and then we were able to send it over to Nick. And Nick was able to use those new tones from guitars and from amps that weren't his own to create a beautiful sound.
I mean, not the intro. So I do the intro on the Dan Electric, and then probably the majority of the song on the Vox.
Cool.
And then what about the modulated part at the end? Do you go back to the Dan Electric, or is that too much?
Oh, you do that, yeah. Cool.
That might be kind of neat.
Sweet. Try that.
Cool.
That's good.
Let's give it a shot.
Let's...
After recording today and recording over winter break with Alan, I think there are 3 big differences between recording amateurly and recording professionally. The first difference is, of course, like the quality of the equipment. I'm not completely sure if I'm convinced that cheap equipment like software plugins are really going to end up being less of a quality in a final product that somebody listening would be able to tell a difference. So that difference I'm not completely sold on yet. The big difference that I think is the biggest difference is between having somebody who's an amateur at mixing and mastering and recording, and somebody who's a professional and knows how to use all the equipment and knows how to get the sounds that you want, and how to use the effects, how to record, how to set up all the equipment. One difference that I never really thought about, but I'm noticing today, is just having an extra person to run the digital audio workstation, to stop it and to start it, and to do the trimming in between.
He had ideas, he had tips, he always ran tracks back whenever we needed. He was really an enormous help to the entire process. There was obviously more equipment. There were numerous instruments that we decided on using in the final mix that we didn't have any idea we wanted to include. We had an organ, a tambourine, a mandolin, and we also had the little shaker eggs. I know for the mics I used were significantly higher quality, and that is partially because of the price differential, but also the experience that was included in the studio manager that was there. He gave us some advice on mics to use, and so he actually recommended that we use a specific mic, which it was about 5 times as much as the mics we have, and it worked pretty well. It brought out a lot of the intricacies of my voice that I had never heard before, and it felt fuller, which was something that had always been lacking before. It was always seemed kind of tinny and thin, but we were able to bring out the full depth of my voice with that mic.
Sickness, she is my weakness. We can make this into anything.
The quality of equipment was so much higher, and even the equipment that we brought, such as Alan brought his own snare, which had always sounded nice, but when we put it in that room with the acoustics that were built into that room, it had never sounded that good before. It sounded like a much better snare. It had the full sound of the snare included.
So I think that was one benefit of the home recording, is that we were able to spend hours upon hours upon hours just doing takes and messing them up and starting over and kind of figuring out our parts that way. And I think the biggest benefit from that also was being able to come into the studio much more prepared, because now we came in today and we were able to say, all right, here's our Dance With Me tracks, and we were able to play drums and bass recorded together, but we played along with guitar parts and vocal parts and synth parts that were all in time and final, so we were able to really kind of play to the song as it's gonna sound, rather than trying to do just drums, bass, and a click, which is the way we had started out.